Long before the rise of great empires or the creation of modern borders, there was one man, his name Abraham, a man whose faith would echo through the ages, shaping the destiny of entire nations. But Abraham's legacy was not confined to a single line of inheritance. His covenant with God would bear fruit through 8 sons, each destined to father nations. Nations whose names have long faded into the sands of time, yet whose descendants walk among us today. From the wilds of the Arabian Peninsula to the highlands of Africa, from the distant mountains of Asia to the bustling cities of Europe, his bloodline stretches further than we often realize. But where are they now? What nations carry the marks of Abraham's sons? Who are his descendants today, and where do they live? This is not just a story of faith. It is the journey of a lineage, spreading across the globe, interwoven into the fabric of cultures and nations. From the tribes of Midian to the kingdoms of Edom, from the vast deserts of Ishmael to the ancient lands of Isaac, we trace their paths. Their names may be forgotten, but their descendants are everywhere. Spread across modern nations and cultures, their influence far-reaching, their connections to Abraham stronger than ever. This is the untold story of Abraham's legacy, a tale that stretches across the ages. And it begins now. Before we begin this incredible journey through history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss the great content churned out on this channel. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world that Abraham shaped together. In the story of humanity, one name stands out: Abraham. This man, born in the ancient land of Mesopotamia, is the father of 3 major world religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. His legacy is not just about his bloodline, but his deep faith and unwavering trust in God. In Judaism, Abraham is the first of the great patriarchs. He is seen as the one with whom God made a promise that his descendants would grow into a great nation. This covenant between Abraham and God is at the heart of the Jewish faith. Through his son Isaac and grandson Jacob, later called Israel, the Jewish people trace their roots directly back to Abraham. For them, he represents a symbol of faith, and his story is a reminder of the relationship between the Jewish people and their Creator. In Christianity, Abraham's role is just as significant. Christians see him as the father of all believers. In the New Testament, his trust in God is praised as a model for all Christians. His willingness to sacrifice his son Isaac as an act of faith is seen as a powerful symbol of trust in God's plan. It is through his faith that Christians believe they, too, can inherit God's promises, not through bloodline, but through belief and trust in the Creator. In Islam, Abraham is known as Ibrahim, and he is greatly respected as one of the prophets. His story, like that in Judaism and Christianity, emphasizes faith and obedience to God. The willingness of Ibrahim to sacrifice his son, traditionally thought to be Ishmael, is commemorated every year by Muslims in the festival of Eid al-Adha. For Muslims, Ibrahim's legacy is a reminder of what it means to submit to God's will fully. Across all 3 faiths, Abraham's lineage is deeply significant. While each religion tells his story in a slightly different way, his importance is universal. He is the father not just of a people, but of a shared faith, a faith that unites billions of people across the world. His legacy is not just passed down through generations, but lives on in the hearts and minds of those who follow these religions today. And at the heart of Abraham's story lies a profound promise, a covenant made between him and God. This covenant, etched in time and passed down through generations, forms the foundation of Abraham's legacy and the future of the nations that would come from his line. It was in the ancient land of Canaan, under the open sky, that God spoke to Abraham and made a remarkable promise. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Genesis 22, verse 17. To Abraham, this promise must have seemed almost impossible. He was an elderly man with no children of his own, and his wife Sarah had long been unable to conceive. Yet, despite the odds, God assured him that his descendants would multiply beyond count. forming nations and peoples that would come to shape the world. This promise of many descendants was not just about numbers. It spoke of a future where Abraham's lineage would carry a special purpose, a destiny that would reach far beyond the confines of his own life. The covenant between God and Abraham was not a simple agreement. It was a divine assurance that his descendants would play a central role in the unfolding story of humanity. As the story unfolds in the scriptures, God's words are more than just a promise of children. They are a pledge of blessing and relationship. God tells Abraham that through his descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Genesis 12, verse 3. This covenant marked the beginning of a divine plan that would stretch over millennia, touching the lives of countless people, shaping the faiths and cultures of generations to come. For Abraham, this covenant was a call to faith and obedience. It was through his unwavering trust in God that this promise began to take root. God commanded Abraham to leave his homeland, his family, and his familiar life, to journey into the unknown, trusting that the promise would be fulfilled. And though it took many years, even decades, the birth of his son Isaac marked the beginning of God's promise being realized. Isaac's descendants, Jacob, later called Israel, and his 12 sons, would form the 12 tribes of Israel, the foundation of the Jewish people. But the significance of this covenant didn't stop there. The promise extended beyond the Jewish people. It was through Abraham's other son, Ishmael, born to Hagar, that another great nation emerged, the Arab nations. Muslims believe that they, too, are the descendants of Abraham, tracing their lineage through Ishmael. For them, the covenant represents a connection to Abraham's faith and submission to God, a legacy that is central to Islam. The story of Ishmael, the firstborn son of Abraham and Hagar, is one of promise, exile, and ultimately, the founding of a great lineage that continues to shape the world today. Ishmael's life unfolds against the backdrop of divine intervention and human choices. Choices that would lead him, his mother, and his descendants to become foundational figures in the history of the Arab world. Ishmael's early years were marked by a time of tension in Abraham's household. Though he was Abraham's first son, born to the Egyptian maidservant Hagar, his place in the family became a source of contention after the birth of Isaac, Sarah's son with Abraham. Sarah, concerned about the inheritance, asked Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away. This was a difficult decision for Abraham, who loved his son. Yet, God reassured him that Ishmael, too, would become the father of a great nation, just as Isaac would. Genesis 21 verses 9 to 14 recounts this turning point. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking. Sarah said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. As Hagar and Ishmael wandered in the wilderness, God intervened once more. In Genesis 21 verse 18, he assured Hagar, "Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." This divine promise would echo throughout the centuries, for Ishmael's descendants would indeed go on to form a powerful and enduring legacy. Ishmael's life, while marked by this early hardship, became one of profound significance, particularly in Islam. To Muslims, Ishmael, or Ismail, is not merely the son of Abraham but a prophet in his own right, revered for his unwavering faith in God. It is believed that Ishmael, alongside Abraham, helped rebuild the Kaaba in Mecca, the most sacred site in Islam. The Kaaba stands as a symbol of monotheism and divine unity, a heritage that Muslims believe traces back directly to Abraham and Ishmael. In the Quran, Ishmael is mentioned multiple times as a symbol of obedience, faith, and sacrifice. His story is intertwined with that of his father, Abraham, and together they represent the deep, unbroken bond between the people of Abrahamic faiths. For Muslims, Ishmael's legacy goes beyond that of a distant ancestor. He is a spiritual father to the Arab nations, and his descendants played a vital role in the spread of Islam. The 12 tribes of Ishmael, Ishmael's descendants, the 12 sons he fathered with his Egyptian wife, are the root of the great Arab tribes. These 12 sons formed tribes that would become some of the most significant in the Arabian Peninsula. According to the Bible, in Genesis 25 verses 13 to 15, their names were Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Keturah, Naphish, Kedemah. These 12 sons and their families migrated across the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, establishing tribes that would later be recognized for their strength, resilience, and cultural influence. Over time, these tribes united to form the backbone of what we now recognize as the Arab peoples. So, what became of the 12 sons of Ishmael? Nebaioth. The descendants of Nebaioth are believed to have settled in the northeastern part of the Arabian Peninsula, and their influence is often linked to the ancient Nabateans. The Nabatean kingdom, centered around Petra, now in modern-day Jordan, played a key role in trade across the desert and connected Arabia to the Mediterranean world. This tribe's influence reached as far as modern Jordan and parts of Syria. 2. Kedar. Kedar's descendants are considered to have settled in the northern Arabian desert. They are often associated with the Bedouin tribes of the Arabian Peninsula. The Keturaites were a powerful and influential tribe, and the region of Kedar is often linked to modern-day Saudi Arabia, especially its northern and western regions. Iraq and parts of Jordan also trace some of their early Arabian roots to Kedar. 3. Adbeel. The descendants of Adbeel are less well documented, but they are often linked to the tribes in the central and southern regions of Arabia. This could include parts of modern Saudi Arabia and Yemen, regions that became home to many of the ancient Arab tribes. 4. Mibsam. Like Adbeel, Mibsam's descendants are not as widely recognized in historical texts, but they are believed to have lived in the southern Arabian Peninsula. Areas of modern Saudi Arabia and Yemen could be associated with them. Yemen, in particular, was home to many ancient Semitic-speaking peoples. 5. Mishma. The descendants of Mishma are often grouped with other southern Arabian tribes. Yemen, which was historically known for its rich trade and culture, is a likely region for Mishma's descendants to have settled. Ancient Yemenite tribes played significant roles in trade and culture, particularly around the Sabaean kingdom. 6. Duma. Duma's descendants are linked to the region that would later become Edom. The Edomites were neighbors and often rivals of the ancient Israelites. This area corresponds to modern-day Jordan, specifically the southern parts, and extends into parts of Saudi Arabia and Israel. 7. Massa. The descendants of Massa are believed to have settled in the areas near Massa, which may have been located in the region between Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Some historical sources suggest they could have inhabited parts of the Syrian desert and the northwestern reaches of Arabia. 8. Hadad. Hadad's descendants are associated with the Hadramaut region, a part of modern-day Yemen and Oman. The Hadramaut is a historically significant region, known for its rich culture and the Hadrami people who have contributed to trade and culture in the Arabian Peninsula. 9. Tema. The tribe of Tema is traditionally believed to have settled in the northern parts of the Arabian Peninsula, near the modern-day Saudi Arabian and Jordanian borders. Tema was a well-known oasis town that became a key stop for caravans traveling along the ancient trade routes. The tribe was influential in regional commerce. 10. Keturah. Keturah's descendants are believed to have inhabited parts of the northern Arabian desert, areas that would be part of modern Jordan, Syria, and possibly parts of Iraq could trace their early roots to this tribe, particularly in regions that were integral to the caravan trade. 11. Naphish. The descendants of Naphish are believed to have lived in the eastern regions of Arabia. This could be associated with parts of modern Iraq and the northeastern parts of the Arabian Peninsula, which were known for their connections to the broader Mesopotamian and Arabian trade routes. 12. Kedemah. Kedemah's descendants are often connected to the eastern Arabian Peninsula. This includes parts of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and even southern Jordan. Like the other tribes, they would have had a strong presence in the desert regions, involved in trade and the development of Arabian culture. The legacy of Ishmael continues to reverberate through the modern Arab world. The Arab nations, spread across the Middle East and North Africa, trace their roots back to Ishmael's 12 sons. His descendants form a cultural and religious identity that is deeply tied to the history of Islam, as well as in the rugged ancient landscape of the Near East, beneath the scorching sun and amidst the ever-changing winds of time, there emerged a child whose birth would forever alter the course of history. Isaac, the son of Abraham and Sarah, was not merely a child born in the natural course of events. He was a divine promise fulfilled, a miracle child whose very existence marked the unfolding of a greater plan, one that would shape the destiny of entire nations. The story of Isaac begins with a deep yearning, a longing felt by his mother, Sarah, and his father, Abraham. Sarah, having long passed the years of fertility, had resigned herself to the belief that she would never bear a child. Yet, when God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, Sarah could scarcely believe it. But in an extraordinary twist of fate, when Sarah was 90 years old and Abraham 100, the promise was realized. Isaac was born, not through any ordinary means, but through the hand of divine intervention. Genesis 21 verses 1-3 recounts, "Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him." Isaac's birth was a testament to God's power over nature and a symbol of faith, for his parents had waited years for the fulfillment of God's word. Isaac's arrival was a miracle, a living embodiment of the promise that Abraham's descendants would outnumber the stars. While Isaac's birth was indeed miraculous, it was what he represented that would continue to echo through time. Isaac was the fulfillment of God's covenant with Abraham. Genesis 17 verse 19 reveals God's declaration, "But Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him." Isaac was not only Abraham's son, but also the heir of a divine promise. It is through Isaac that the lineage of Israel would begin to take shape, and his descendants would inherit the promise made to Abraham. Isaac's role as the second patriarch in the Hebrew lineage is pivotal. Although he is often overshadowed by the more prominent figures of his father Abraham and his son Jacob, Isaac's contribution to the narrative is essential. His life bridged the gap between the founding patriarch Abraham and his son Jacob, who would go on to father the 12 tribes of Israel. Isaac had 2 sons, Esau, the firstborn, and Jacob the second. It was Jacob, whose name would later be changed to Israel, who would become the father of the 12 tribes. The significance of Isaac's relationship with Jacob is profound, for it was through Isaac's blessing that the divine promise was transferred from one generation to the next. Genesis 27 verses 28-29 records the moment Isaac blesses Jacob. "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and people bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." These blessings mark the beginning of the 12 tribes of Israel, whose descendants would come to define the nation of Israel and the broader history of the Jewish people. Isaac's blessing of Jacob was more than just a father's gift to his son. It was a continuation of the covenant promise that God had made to Abraham. Through Jacob, Isaac's legacy would be firmly established. For Jacob's 12 sons would grow into the tribes that would define Israel's identity for centuries to come. Isaac's descendants play an integral role in both Judaism and Christianity, 2 of the world's most enduring faiths. In Judaism, Isaac is considered the second patriarch after Abraham, and his life and descendants represent the fulfillment of God's covenant with Abraham. The 12 tribes of Israel, which were birthed from the sons of Jacob, would go on to form the heart of the Jewish people. From the Exodus to the formation of the Kingdom of Israel, Isaac's descendants were central to the unfolding story of God's chosen people. In Christianity, Isaac is seen as part of the Messianic lineage, the family line that ultimately leads to Jesus Christ. In Christian thought, Isaac is often viewed as a type or foreshadowing of Christ. the moment when Abraham, at God's command, was willing to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Moriah, is seen as a powerful prefiguration of God's own sacrifice of his son, Jesus, on the cross. Isaac's near sacrifice and the intervention of God to provide a ram as a substitute draws a direct parallel to the Christian belief in Jesus' sacrificial death and the salvation of humanity through him. Isaac's legacy is not limited to the ancient world. His story continues to be relevant today, as both Judaism and Christianity trace their spiritual roots through him. For Jews, he remains a symbol of divine faithfulness, and for Christians, a link in the lineage of Christ. After Sarah's passing, Abraham, now an elderly man, took Keturah as his second wife. The Bible introduces her in Genesis 25 verses 1-2, stating, "Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua." While the scriptures do not provide much detail about Keturah's background, she is often considered a woman of deep faith, chosen by Abraham after a lifetime of following God's commands. The union of Abraham and Keturah was not one of covenantal promise, as was the case with Sarah, but it nevertheless played an important role in continuing the legacy of Abraham's family. From this marriage, Abraham would father 6 sons, each of whom would establish their own tribes and regions, adding to the complex tapestry of Abraham's extended family. And though their names may not always be as familiar as Isaac or Jacob, their descendants would go on to influence various regions and peoples. These 6 sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, each carried forward the legacy of Abraham's bloodline, branching out into various parts of the ancient Near East. Though their territories and influence often lay to the east of the Promised Land, they were by no means insignificant in the broader historical context. 1. Zimran's descendants are often associated with the area east of Israel, in the broader region of the Arabian Peninsula. Though the Bible does not provide much specific information about Zimran's tribe, it is believed that his descendants played a role in shaping the nomadic groups that settled in the desert regions of the Arabian Peninsula. 2. Jokshan's descendants were associated with the Arabian and Ethiopian regions. He fathered 2 sons, Sheba and Dedan. The name Sheba is particularly notable, as it corresponds to the ancient kingdom of Sheba, traditionally thought to be located in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula in modern-day Yemen. The kingdom of Sheba became famous for its wealth and trade, and the Queen of Sheba is remembered for visiting King Solomon to test his wisdom. Jokshan's legacy can be traced to the trade routes and kingdoms of Arabia, which thrived on commerce with Africa, the Mediterranean, and beyond. The descendants of Jokshan would later merge into the cultures of the ancient world, particularly influencing the Sabaean kingdom. 3. Medan's descendants are often linked to the nomadic tribes of the northern Arabian desert. Though little is mentioned about the specific tribal organization of Medan's people, it is believed that they were part of the larger migration of groups that spread across the Arabian Peninsula. These people lived in the harsh, arid conditions of the desert, relying on trade and pastoralism. 4. The Midianites were perhaps the most prominent of Keturah's sons, playing a crucial role in the biblical narrative. The descendants of Midian are often associated with the southern Arabian Peninsula, specifically the regions of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. The Midianites were nomadic people who wandered the desert, yet their tribes were known for their wealth and influence. One of the most well-known figures from the Midianite tribe is Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, a priest of Midian. The Midianites appear in several key biblical stories, including their conflict with the Israelites, particularly during the time of Moses and Judges. The Midianites were involved in commerce and the caravan trade, traveling between Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Arabian Peninsula, becoming well known in the region. The legacy of the Midianites extended far beyond their role in biblical history, as their descendants likely formed part of the fabric of later Arab tribes and the various peoples of the Arabian Peninsula. 5. Ishbak. The descendants of Ishbak are less prominent in historical records, but it is believed that they settled in the desert regions of the Arabian Peninsula near Mesopotamia. Little is known of the tribe's influence, but they likely blended with other nomadic peoples of the region, contributing to the mosaic of cultures that would eventually form the backbone of the broader Arab identity. 6. Shua. Shua is another of Keturah's sons whose descendants were thought to have spread into Arabia and parts of North Africa. While their specific role in the broader history is unclear, it is believed that the Shuakites, as they came to be known, were part of the nomadic peoples that moved across the desert regions of the Middle East. Some scholars even trace the migration of these people into parts of North Africa, where they likely contributed to the ancient Berber tribes of the region. Abraham's later lineage through his marriage to Keturah represents a fascinating yet often overlooked chapter in the history of the ancient Near East. The 6 sons of Abraham and Keturah, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, each contributed to the spread of Abraham's descendants far beyond the immediate borders of Israel and Judah. While Isaac's descendants formed the heart of the Hebrew nation, Keturah's children formed the broader familial network that expanded across the vast desert regions of the Arabian Peninsula and into Africa. These tribes, often linked to the nomadic traditions of the desert, were integral to the shaping of the peoples and cultures of the ancient world. From the Midianites to the Sheban kingdom, from Jokshan's descendants to the Bedouin tribes, Abraham's legacy through Keturah was a significant thread woven into the fabric of the ancient Middle East, influencing the course of history in ways both large and small. Though Keturah's lineage did not carry the covenantal promise made to Abraham and Isaac, her descendants continued to influence the peoples of the desert and the surrounding regions for generations, leaving their mark on the world in ways that echo through time. Abraham's legacy, though birthed in the desert, has reached far and wide. His descendants, scattered across continents and cultures, maintain his memory and teachings. His influence extends not just through the religions that trace their roots to him, but also through the countless stories, traditions, and rituals that echo across the centuries. From the ancient Hebrews to the modern Muslims, from the Jews of Europe to the Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula, Abraham remains a unifying force, a symbol of faith, sacrifice, and enduring promise. Across the world, Abraham's legacy continues to shape the moral, spiritual, and cultural landscape. His influence is seen in the art, literature, philosophy, and law of the nations that trace their spiritual heritage to him. Abraham, the patriarch who once wandered the desert, remains a guiding figure, his story and teachings lighting the way for billions of people.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to uncover more hidden scriptures with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got even more insightful content coming your way, and you won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.